Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today I'm doing a review of the Farseer Trilogy by Robin Hobb. This is a series that I read last year and I had some ups and downs with it, but overall enjoyed it, so I want to talk about it and kind of talk about my experience of reading it. In this series, the first book is Assassin's Apprentice, the second book is The Royal Assassin, and the third book is Assassin's Quest. This is the first trilogy in Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderlings series. So she has a world that she calls the Realm of the Elderlings that there are quite a few series in. I think she has 5 series in. There are 4 trilogies and 1 quartet that all take place in this one world. So we get to learn more about this world and explore it over time, which is a really interesting way of doing it. She has 3 series that specifically follow Fitz and the Fool. This is the first one of that series. This is a high fantasy story that takes place in this Realm of the Elderlings. Specifically, the country that it's in is called the Six Duchies. We follow Fitz, who is the illegitimate son of the prince-in-waiting Chivalry. When Fitz's existence is discovered, Chivalry steps down from his position out of shame and he will no longer inherit the kingdom. Fitz is then brought to the capital of the Six Duchies to be raised in the palace and to be trained as an assassin. The first book, as I said, is Assassin's Apprentice, and this one starts with Fitz being very young. I think he is about 6 years old when this begins. He had been raised by his mother's family. The story starts out when Fitz is brought to the attention of the royal family and brought to the capital of the Six Duchies to live with them. And this mostly follows his early years, him getting used to living in this new environment. He lives with the head of the stables, who was a close friend of his father's. He never meets his father, but this stable hand, or the head of the stables, becomes like a father figure to him and raises him. And he also begins his assassin training in this story. This first book I had a very hard time with. I think I gave this book 3 stars. I didn't really enjoy it. I felt like it was just one bad thing after another. I know that some people praise Robin Hobb for not being afraid to have terrible things happen to her characters, but to me, for this one, it just felt like it was too much. And the theme of the book just felt like it was everything's the worst and everyone dies. And for me, I just didn't really care that much about it because there was no ebb and flow to the story. I felt it was just terrible thing after terrible thing, and I didn't really feel like I could connect to any of the characters in this one specifically. I will say that I really do like Robin Hobb's writing. I find it very engaging and immersive. This story, I would be reading it and get really into it in terms of the writing and the world, and then at a certain point I would kind of come out of it and kind of think, do I actually care about anybody or anything that's going on? And the answer was no. But I had gotten so sucked in from the writing and the world. So I think her writing was really, really good. I think the series gets better as it goes on. Personally, I had a really hard time getting into this first book. Also, just as a warning about this one, there are animals that die, some beloved animals, and a dog that dies in this book. So I just like to warn people about that because that's something I always want to know so I can be emotionally prepared. I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. I thought that the writing was done really well, but I didn't really care about the plot or the characters. But I was willing to give the series another try because I know that it's so popular and I thought that the writing was good, so I continued on with the series. The second book is Royal Assassin, and this one I enjoyed much more than the first one. So this is actually why I wanted to do this review at all, is to say, if you read the first book and you don't enjoy it, do give the second book a try, because I really did not like the first one and I just didn't care about it, but the second one is really good and the series definitely gets way better. After I read the first book, I actually searched for some reviews to see if there were other people who agreed with me and didn't like the first one, and I found this one guy's review that I can't remember where it's from and I wish I could. If I can find the video, I'll link it below. but I don't remember who it was. But essentially, he said that he had read the first book, didn't like it, but for some reason picked up the second, and it was really good and really worth reading. And that was part of also why I continued on and read the second book. And I'm really happy that I did, because I really, really enjoyed it. So I'm really making this video to make this statement that if you didn't like the first one, if you're struggling with it, do at least give the second book a try. If you don't like the second book, you're probably not going to like the series, because this is the best one in the series. But I would say at least try the second. Anyway, this second book follows Fitz as he's a little bit older. He's completed a lot of his assassin training. He has more responsibilities, and he's really putting his skills to work. The country is being kind of overrun by an illness, sort of. And there are like bandits also. It's hard to explain without spoilers, but the country is having some problems, and Fitz is sent out to use his special skills and his discretion as an assassin to kind of help the country and maybe dispose of some of these bad things that are happening without people really knowing, without drawing attention to it. So that's what a lot of this one is about, but this one gets much more into the politics. So there's a lot more political intrigue in this one. So we see a lot more of people kind of posturing and positioning themselves and trying to manipulate things. And there are other family members who are trying to either use Fitz to their advantage or get rid of him. In this one, we also get to learn a little bit more about the Fool, who is a character that becomes more prominent throughout the books. I know that later on in the series, he becomes even more prominent. I haven't read all of Robin Hobb's books yet, but I know that he becomes a really important character, and we get to learn a little bit more about him in this one, and he and Fitz really start to develop or establish their relationship. Also in Royal Assassin, we get some more characters or learn more about some of these side characters that I really enjoyed and really cared about more. I actually am not a huge fan of Fitz, the main character. He's not always the brightest, and he's not necessarily someone who thinks things through. I feel like he very much just barrels forward and hopes for the best. And which doesn't sound like a good trait for an assassin, but that's kind of what he's like, and I didn't feel that connected to him. But I do really like some of these side characters. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. I think that I gave it 4 stars, maybe 4.5 out of 5 stars. This one had a very distinct feeling to it as I was reading it, and I got really sucked in. Again, I think the writing is really good and the world is really good, and I love when books have a very distinct vibe to them or feeling, because that's what really brings me back to a book. And last up, we have Assassin's Quest, which is the final book in the series and also the chunkiest. It's like over 800 pages. Robin Hobb books get pretty big. This one, again, of course, is following Fitz. This one has more travel in it. He is at a point in his life and at a point politically where he needs to do some traveling. And so that was something that I had kind of a hard time with, because I'm not a big fan of travel scenes or large traveling portions to books. I think that probably like 200 pages of this book could have been cut out and it would have been just fine. It may have been a little bit stronger because of all of that traveling. Some of it was kind of pointless. In this last one, we especially get to learn more about Fitz's magic because Fitz has 2 kinds of magic. He has magic from both sides of his family. From his mother's side of the family, he has the wit, which allows him to speak to animals and bond with them in a magical way that most people can't. And so we really get to find out more about the wit. Before this point, we mostly learned about the magic that he got from his father's side of the family, which was more of like a mind control, not exactly mind control. He can kind of influence people by like nudging their emotions and their thoughts. And that was a really interesting kind of magic too, but I also, I love the kind of magic that involves animals or like talking to animals, so I was much more interested in the wit. And this one we get to learn a little bit more about that, which is cool. And as the characters are traveling in this book, we also get to learn more about them because they're traveling, they're in a less structured environment. So we get to learn more, not just about Fitz, but also about the Fool, also about Night Eyes, who is a character that comes in. I love Night Eyes as a character, probably my favorite character in this series. Night Eyes is a wolf that Fitz speaks to using the wit, so they can speak mind to mind. And Night Eyes is probably the best part of these books. Like, he's real great. Assassin's Quest was probably my second favorite in the series because my favorite goes Royal Assassin is my favorite, then Assassin's Quest, and then Assassin's Apprentice is my least favorite in the series. But this one, I probably gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Even though I think it probably could have been cut down, it was still very enjoyable. Overall, I really enjoyed this series. As I said, I had a bit of a hard start with Assassin's Apprentice, but overall the series was really worth it to read and I did enjoy it. And I would recommend this series. The writing, I think, is really, really good. It is a little bit of denser writing. It is very much like high fantasy, world building, intense writing that I really enjoyed, but I would say just go into it knowing that. This story is definitely full of political intrigue. I don't know if it has a very strong overarching plot. There is a bit of a plot, but it isn't like a really strong plot overall. Mostly we're just following Fitz throughout his life and interacting with the political intrigue and political structure of the time and kind of what's going on there. So there's some plot of the ebb and flow of the politics and what is happening. Most of the actual plot probably happens in the 3rd book, but overall plot is probably not its strong suit, I would say. And again, if you give this series a try and you don't enjoy the 1st book, I really do recommend giving the 2nd book a try because it's really worth it and it really, really does improve. So that can make a huge difference. I am now planning to read all of Robin Hobb's books in her Realm of the Elderlings series. So clearly it must be pretty good because that is a big commitment because I think there are like 15, 16 books and most of them are pretty chunky. So I'm really committing to this, but I think that it's going to be worth it. So that is all for my review of the Farseer Trilogy by Robin Hobb. Let me know in the comments if you have read this series and what you thought of it. I would love to hear about it. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye!